The air was thick with whispers and judgment as Bella Halt stood alone, her past hidden beneath a simple blazer and a silver pin shaped like an eagle. 13 years ago, she flew through fire, defying orders to bring her team home, only to be erased by the very institution she served. Now, at the edge of a ceremony honoring new heroes, she feels the sting of forgotten scars and mocking glances. But when she reveals the broken winged eagle inked on her shoulder, a symbol of a mission meant to be buried, the crowd falls silent, and one general's trembling voice breaks the stillness. Lieutenant Halt, I thought you were gone. This is the story of a woman who carried the weight of silence, stood tall against betrayal, and reminded the world that true honor never fades. Bella Halt had been just another pilot, until she wasn't. Who let her sit in the veterans section? That's for real pilots. The whispers, sharp as razors, sliced through the gathering crowd like a breeze through tall grass. A few chuckled under their breath, their laughter riding on assumptions. Nice tattoo, one cadet jeered, squinting at her from a row up. Did she get that at Comic-Con? Another joined in, lips curled with scorn. Broken eagle. How fitting. A third cadet leaned in, his voice low and mocking. Maybe it's her way of saying she crashed. They snickered, but when she shrugged off her coat, time stilled. The sun struck the ink on her shoulder, a stark black eagle with one wing torn, fractured mid-flight. Beneath it, 077, the broken-winged eagle. Unit 077, a symbol that was never meant to be seen again. A mission scrubbed from records. A unit buried by silence. From the stage, the commandant of cadets, General Malcolm Stratton, faltered mid-sentence. The note cards in his hand stuttered in rhythm with his heartbeat. He looked up, saw her, and for a moment the past stared him dead in the face. Colorado Springs Air Force Academy was draped in celebration that morning. Polished brass railings gleaming in the sun, flags fluttering on either side of the stage. Rows upon rows of white folding chairs cradled proud families and cadets. Photographers moved through the crowd like ants at a picnic. A drone hovered above, quietly broadcasting. At the edge of it all stood a woman in a charcoal gray blazer, solitary and still. Bella Halt, 13 years gone. She adjusted a silver pin on her lapel, the outline of an eagle. No rank, no name. Just a ghost of the past pressed into metal. Her eyes scanned the parade field, but saw no one familiar. She hadn't expected to. The Air Force hadn't spoken her name in years. Her invitation had arrived unceremoniously, a slip of paper tucked in a plain envelope signed simply, Honored Guest, Veteran Division. It hadn't said why. She moved through the murmuring crowd with quiet grace. A cadet holding a program glanced at her, then quickly looked away. Another frowned, whispering to the person beside him. The tension followed her like a shadow. At the edge of the veteran honored pilot section, she stepped forward. "Excuse me, ma'am," said a staff sergeant in dress blues, stepping in front of her. "These seats are reserved for honored veterans." "I know," Bella replied, calm and firm. She held up her credentials, the laminated tag clipped to her blazer. He read it. A flicker of confusion crossed his face, uncertainty momentarily overtaking protocol. "I'll have to double-check the roster," he said. From behind them, a cadet muttered, not quietly enough. Maybe someone brought their ante to the wrong section. Laughter followed. Bella didn't flinch. She stepped back. 2 rows behind, Colonel Thomas Reed Rhett, seated in a wheelchair, looked up at her and gave a solemn nod. His name tag gleamed. She nodded back. No one else did. A quiet direction sent her to the last row of the veterans' seating area, just where the sunlight met the shadow. She took her place without complaint, coat still on. The band on stage began with a triumphant flourish of brass. General Stratton stepped to the podium. Cameras locked onto him. Applause rang out like rifle fire. Somewhere near the stage, a small cluster of cadets leaned in close. "She's sitting too close," one muttered. "Must be someone's mom. Wait, look at her shoulder." Bella had shed her coat. The heat had grown unbearable. The sunlight needled her skin. She rolled her shoulders, stretching slightly. The murmurs intensified. Her sleeveless blouse revealed the ink, an eagle with broken symmetry. One wing extended in defiance, the other torn, uneven. Below it, 077. Is that real? A cadet asked, squinting. Nice ink, another said. Comic-Con? Broken Eagle, a third added with a smirk. Fitting. The tallest one leaned closer. His voice dripped with ridicule. Maybe it means she crashed. Laughter spread again, but softer now. Something else stirred beneath it. A shift. General Stratton stopped mid-sentence. He looked up from his cards. His gaze swept over the rows of dignitaries, then to the veterans further back. His eyes locked on Bella. She hadn't moved. Neither had he. Then his jaw slackened. The note cards slipped from his hands and scattered across the podium. At first, no one noticed. The cameras stayed fixed on his face. The general, a man who had delivered countless speeches to countless graduates, stood frozen, his mouth open, then closed. Ladies and gentlemen, he said at last, his voice catching, before I continue, I need to acknowledge someone. A quiet rustle moved through the audience. I need to recognize a guest I did not expect to see today. He stepped down from the podium. An aide rushed forward with the fallen note cards, but he ignored them. His boots thudded against the stage stairs. He walked directly toward her. Every head turned, every camera followed. Bella rose slowly, not out of pride, out of instinct. General Stratton stopped just a few feet away. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he raised his hand, not in salute, not in command, but in something softer. Recognition. Lieutenant Halt, he said, voice taut with emotion. I thought you were gone. A wave of gasps rippled through the crowd. The same cadets who had mocked her now sat stiff as statues. One dropped his cap. Another took a slow, stunned step back. Bella nodded once. They tried to erase me. The general's face twisted. Guilt, disbelief, sorrow warred behind his eyes. I remember, he said quietly. You brought back the only plane that made it out. The whispers exploded into hushed astonishment. That unit was blacklisted, someone said. I thought they were gone. She's from 77, another added, wide-eyed. General Stratton turned back toward the podium, then faced the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice finding its anchor again, allow me to reintroduce you to the pilot of the impossible return, the woman who flew through fire and silence. Then he turned back to Bella. If you're willing, he said, would you sit where you truly belong? He gestured to the front row. Bella hesitated. Her breath caught. Then she stepped forward. As she walked past the cadets, the air parted. No one laughed. No one whispered. Only stunned silence. The ink on her shoulder gleamed again. Broken-winged, never forgotten. She lowered herself into the seat General Stratton had indicated. Front row, stage left, cameras pointed directly at her. Her presence, once questioned, now demanded reverence. Behind her, cadets sat upright, no longer smirking. Some glanced at her shoulder, but quickly looked away. She could feel the air shift, no longer just heat and sunlight, but pressure, eyes, hesitation. She had sat among them once, long ago, not in this seat, not in this light, but in uniform, among peers, braced for judgment, for trial, for silence. And now she was here again, the past walking into the present, her story not erased, but returned. She had nearly walked away from all of it. The invitation had come out of nowhere, printed on thick, cream-colored cardstock, embossed lettering to catching the kitchen light, and signed by a hand she hadn't seen in 10 years. For days, she left it untouched on her counter, like it was radioactive. She told herself it was all just optics, damage control dressed up as ceremony, a PR spectacle meant to nod to the phantoms no one dared speak of. She had stood over her old flighted jacket, lighter in hand. The 077 patch had already been unstitched, folded into her palm like a relic. One flick, one flame, and it would all be gone. Ashes, forgotten. But she couldn't do it. She couldn't lie to herself the way the world already had. This was different. Now back on the academy grounds, General Stratton returned to the podium. His voice had steadied, though it hadn't fully recovered from the weight of what had just happened. He spoke of legacy, of honor, of sacrifice, and silence. His words weren't ceremonial, at least not anymore. They had gained weight, bent under a sudden truth that had unraveled years of tradition in a matter of minutes. The crowd clapped, but it was subdued, thoughtful. Bella didn't smile. She hadn't come for applause. As the ceremony moved forward, the newly commissioned officers stood tall and raised their right hands in perfect unison. The oath rang out, crisp and certain. Bella scanned their faces, young, proud, untouched by war. Some glanced toward her in the middle of the pledge, their eyes betraying a mixture of reverence and unease. Her presence had altered something, redefined the air they breathed that day. For better or worse, she had become a symbol. When the final name was read, caps flew skyward. A ripple of cheers followed, but even the joy felt softer than usual. The silence Bella had carried with her and into that courtyard had begun to seep outward. She stood quietly. Reporters drifted over. She waved them off. At the foot of the stage, General Stratton approached. "You shouldn't have been invited anonymously," he said. "I wasn't supposed to be invited at all," Bella replied. He exhaled slowly, his jaw tight. "I didn't know about your record." "About how they buried it?" He nodded once. Bella looked to the sky. A flyby was scheduled, the final mark of tradition. But the jets were nowhere yet. "They didn't have a choice," she said. 077 was never meant to be remembered. "I'm changing that," Stratton replied. "Starting today." He extended a lanyard. Attached was a laminated pass. "All access, guest of honor." Her brow lifted. "There's something you need to see," he said, motioning toward the far side of the ceremony grounds. Beyond, the hangar complex loomed. They walked in silence, flanked by two aides who kept their eyes forward but exchanged tight glances. The closer they came to the restricted zone, the more Bella changed. Her posture straightened, shoulders drawn, eyes sharpened. It was the shift of muscle memory returning to a woman who had been forced to forget how to fight. "Most of this area has been repurposed for drone testing," Stratton explained. "But one corner we left alone." He keyed in a code. The lock responded with a grinding mechanical groan. The heavy door creaked open. Inside, the space felt like a sealed time capsule. Dim lighting, temperature-controlled air, walls lined with display cases, sealed files, and preserved remnants. One piece of fuselage sat at the center, raised behind velvet rope. Faded numbers etched along its hull. 077. Bella froze. Her throat constricted, and her feet felt glued to the ground. "There it is," Stratton said quietly. "The one that came home." She stepped forward, slow and reverent. The metal was warped, punctured with shrapnel wounds, burn scars scattered across the surface. The eagle insignia had been shredded, the paint charred and peeling. But it was unmistakable. Her hand hovered inches from it, but she didn't touch. "Why is this still here?" she whispered. Stratton folded his arms. "Because someone on the archival board refused to destroy it, said it deserved to be remembered. And because some part of us knew your story wasn't finished." A screen next to the display flickered on. Grainy footage appeared. Combat drone video, her aircraft limping across hostile terrain, flames spilling from the undercarriage, the camera shaking from impact and smoke. Operation Ghost Reach, comm sector blinked in bold, glitchy letters. Bella's jaw clenched. The footage pulled her back into that cockpit, the smell of burning wires, the turbine's dying shriek, and worst of all, the silence in her headset where 6 other voices should have been. "Why show me this now?" Stratton didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked to a file cabinet and pulled out a slim folder. A red stamp screamed across the cover. "Declassified in Level 4. Baisi Basiaza Level 4. He handed it to her. "Because the Air Force owes you the truth." Bella opened it. The first page, her name. The second, a dismissal order, but slashed across it in thick red letters. "Voided. Reinstated in absentia." She blinked. What? What is this?" Stratton's voice dropped. "Someone tried to fix what had been done. Quietly. Without a press release. Without medals. It got lost in politics, in the chain of command. You were technically reinstated 6 years ago, but no one told you." Her hand shook. "I thought I was dishonorably discharged." "You were, then you weren't. Then you disappeared. And we let you. That's on us." Bella shut the folder slowly and held it to her chest. Above them, the jets finally came. A roar cracked the sky open, white trails searing through blue as they thundered overhead in tight formation. Stratton and the aides looked up, but Bella didn't. Her eyes remained fixed on the wreckage of U-77. "You know what the hardest part was?" she said, more to herself than to him. "It wasn't the crash. It wasn't the silence afterward. It was waking up every morning still alive and wondering if that was the mistake." Stratton looked at her. For once, the general had no reply. "Come with me," he said instead. "There's one more place you need to see." They left the hangar. This time, no one followed. He led her behind the dormitory buildings where trees grew tall and quiet. A memorial garden, shaded and still, dotted with plaques and flags. At the far end, a black granite pillar stood, etched across its polished surface. "In memory of the silent wings, Unit 077, Mia, 6 status unresolved." Bella stopped in front of it, motionless. Stratton's voice came low. "Until now." She reached out, tracing her fingers along the names carved into the stone. "I buried them," she said. "Not in coffins, but in silence." Then it's time they spoke again. They stood there for a long time. Neither moved. When Bella finally turned, something had changed in her gaze. Not peace, not yet, but something solid, something forward. "You said you're changing things," she said. "Then don't just honor me. Reopen the file. Clear their names." Stratton nodded once. "Done." As they made their way back toward the stage, Stratton climbed the platform again to gather his notes. A single sheet slipped from the stack and floated down, landing face up beside Bella's boot. Her eyes caught the bold red type stamped across the center. "Mission Ghost Reach, classified, presumed dead." She reached to pick it up, but paused. Her eyes met Stratton's. Nearby cadets had stilled. No one breathed. Bella looked down once more at the page, then turned her gaze skyward. "I was never the ghost," she said softly. "Just the memory they tried to bury." The ceremony was over. The crowd had thinned, people drifting away in pairs and small groups. But for Bella Halt, that moment marked a beginning, not an end. Her real mission was only just starting. 3 days later, she stood on the tarmac at Peterson Space Force Base, the dry wind sweeping her curls across her face. Her eyes locked on the looming gray shape of the C-130 transport plane in front of her. It stood like a relic from another life, one she'd never truly left behind. Behind her, the hangar bay buzzed with the sound of wrenches, orders, and footsteps on steel. But Bella's presence cut through that noise like a blade. Conversations dipped, glances flicked her way. People passed around clipboards and sideways whispers. She wasn't in uniform, at least, not officially. But the reinstatement documents tucked in the side pocket of her weathered canvas bag said otherwise. Bella hadn't come back for glory, not for revenge either. She came for the one thing the silence had denied her for years, the truth. The Air Force, after an internal review prompted by General Stratton's intervention, had finally agreed to open a formal inquiry into Operation Ghost Reach. For nearly a decade, those files had been sealed in the bureaucratic equivalent of a locked vault, buried deeper than memory. But now someone had started pulling them into the light. Bella had asked for only one thing in exchange: let her finish what she started. At first, the higher-ups resisted, but then the graduation footage surfaced. The video went viral. Millions watched. They saw the tattoo, an eagle with one broken wing. They heard the call sign, Go 77. Somewhere high in the chain of command, someone made a quiet decision. Let her walk. Her boots clanged on the metal ramp as she stepped aboard the C-130. Inside the fuselage, seated on the side benches, were 6 younger officers, investigative aides from the Judge Advocate General's office. Most of them averted their eyes, awkward and unsure. A couple offered stiff, polite nods. One leaned forward slightly, a woman in crisp digital camo, voice low and sincere. "Ma'am, I read your file. It's an honor." Bella gave a short nod. "That file's incomplete," she said. "That's why we're here." The engines kicked to life. As the aircraft lifted into the air, Bella turned toward the porthole. The rugged greens and browns of Colorado gave way to endless golden sand, a desert stretching beyond imagination. Her thoughts wandered. Kay. She hadn't said that name aloud in years, not since the day everything shattered. The wreckage had never been recovered. The crash site was declared lost when diplomatic roadblocks had shut down military access to the region. That too had changed. A recent agreement, delicate and heavily negotiated, had granted her a narrow window to revisit the site. It was all she had, and all she needed. When they landed at Al Dhafra Air Base in the UAE, the heat hit her like a wall, but she barely noticed. Her focus was fixed on the figure standing at the edge of the tarmac. Colonel David Mercer, American liaison, late 50s, clean-shaven, broad-shouldered. He approached with a calm confidence and extended his hand. "Lieutenant Halt, you're causing quite the stir." "That's not my goal," she said plainly. "No," he replied, "but it's necessary. Come with me." Inside the command tent, a large digital map displayed the surrounding region. Red zones marked hostile territory still too volatile for any operation. A single blinking dot marked the point of extraction, the only place they were allowed to visit. "They're giving us 20 minutes, Mercer said. "That's it. After that, we're out. No exceptions." Bella gave a nod. "That's all I need." She suited up. The combat vest felt heavier than she remembered. The helmet smelled of new polymers, synthetic and clean, none of the old scent of sweat and sand. She boarded the Black Hawk and strapped in beside the JAG team, refusing to think about how many of these flights she'd taken and how few had brought her back. The helicopter skimmed low over the desert. A voice cut through the static in her headset. "Approaching coordinates, 10 minutes. Bella glanced down. The landscape changed. Dunes turned to jagged rocks, then to scorched, blackened earth. And then she saw it. Wreckage. Twisted metal, half swallowed by sand. Burn marks still visible on the ground, stubborn against time. The crash site, the helicopter landed hard. Bella was the first one out. The second her boots touched the earth, her breath caught. It was all still here. The scorched skeletons of the aircraft that once carried her and her team into the fire. The charred nose cone of Bravo 7. The melted wing panel of Alpha 9. And near the shallow crater's edge, her own bird. Ghost reached Delta. Her steps were swift. The others behind her struggled to keep pace. She halted at a broken slab of fuselage. A name was still faintly visible through the soot. McCrae, her co-pilot, gone before they ever hit the ground. She knelt, fingers brushing the burned steel. A slow beep pulsed in her earpiece. "Lieutenant Halt," Mercer called out. 10 minutes. "I know," she answered. She rose and moved toward the remains of the cargo hold. One of the JAG officers followed. Lieutenant Sarah Wexler, face tense with uncertainty. "Ma'am, is there something specific you're looking for?" Bella didn't turn. "Yes." She pointed to a cracked panel near the floor of the bay. Together they pried it open. Beneath the warped casing, burned but intact, was the blackened shell of a flight recorder. Bella pulled it free and held it up. Wexler's eyes widened. "We were told nothing could be recovered." "They were wrong." Bella handed it off to Mercer's team. "Get it to the lab, fast." Another beep, louder, more urgent. 3 minutes, someone called. Bella scanned the site one last time. Her eyes caught a flicker. Not a memory, something real, something glinting in the sun. She moved toward it. Dog tags, 6 of them. Some buried, others scorched. But she didn't need to read the names. She knew them by the weight, by touch alone. Warren, Diaz, McCrae, Fenn, Lynn, Roas, her team. She gathered them in trembling hands, silently, reverently. "Time's up," Mercer called. She clutched the tags and ran. Back aboard the Black Hawk, the silence was thick, heavy in a different way now. The JAG officers didn't speak. Mercer said nothing. Bella sat apart, staring at the dog tags in her hands, letting the past settle around her. Not buried, not forgotten. Waiting. Back at base, the black box was rushed into a secure facility. A tech team worked urgently to extract what they could. Hours passed. Bella paced the hallway like a ghost. Lieutenant Wexler emerged first. Her eyes were wide. "You need to hear this." Inside the lab, audio played on a loop. At first, only static. Then shouting. Chaos. Explosions. And then Bella's voice. Distorted but unmistakable. "Control. This is Delta Actual. We're hit. Ghost Reach is compromised. 6 down. I repeat, 6 down." A pause, then another voice. Cold. Detached. "Delta Actual. Abort mission. Do not attempt recovery. Repeat, do not retrieve assets. Bella's jaw tensed. That voice, that order. She remembered it, the one she disobeyed. Then her voice again, fierce, steady. Negative control, I'm bringing them home. The recording ended. Wexler looked at her, stunned. You were ordered to leave them. Bella nodded slowly. And they punished you for refusing. She stepped back into the hallway. The pressure on her chest was crushing, but she welcomed it, because now, finally, the truth had a voice. The storm didn't begin in the sky. It started in inboxes, in boardrooms, on encrypted phone lines. 48 hours after the audio was decrypted and verified, it reached the Pentagon. What had once been whispers, a rumor about a buried mission, a vanished pilot, and an act of rebellion turned rescue, was now headline news. The Air Force issued a short statement confirming that a routine. The declassification review was officially underway, but behind closed doors, it was anything but routine. Bella Halt, the erased pilot from Unit 277, the name that had long been confined to forgotten reports and quiet whispers, was no longer a ghost in the files. She had become a riddle, one the Department of Defense wasn't ready to solve. In a quiet office on base in Colorado Springs, Bella sat alone, her figure still and unreadable. A muted television played footage in a continuous loop. News anchors breathlessly narrating over slow-motion replays, her name flashing across the screen in strict white letters. Her voice, pulled from the recovered black box, was broadcast with theatrical urgency, echoing against the swelling drama of background music. Panels of retired officers argued across networks. Was she a hero? A threat? A wild card? But none of them had sat in that cockpit. None had faced what she faced. Lieutenant Sarah Wexler stepped in, carrying 2 thick folders. She paused before placing them on the table, her expression tight with unspoken tension. The committee needs your statement before noon, she said. Bella didn't lift her gaze. Which committee? Technically, it's a joint review board, Wexler replied. But unofficially, it's everyone who ever tried to bury 077. Bella reached out and pulled the first folder toward her. Let them read what they buried. Wexler said nothing. Outside, the energy was beginning to shift. A modest crowd had formed at the base gate. Veterans, reporters, curious cadets holding homemade signs. Some read, "Welcome back, Lieutenant Halt." Others were starker. Honor 077. Her broken winged eagle tattoo had spread across the internet like a spark in dry brush. For many, it had come to mean more than just one failed mission. It was a symbol of every pilot, soldier, or sailor cast aside, silenced, denied dignity by bureaucracy. General Malcolm Stratton arrived just before the noon deadline. They're nervous, he said. Good, Bella replied without looking at him. It's not just the exposure that worries them, Stratton added. It's the accountability. Bella finally turned to face him. Will you stand with me? His response came without pause. Yes. The review board convened by secure video link. 5 faces framed in small boxes, 2 generals in full dress, a civilian from the Department of Defense, a congressional liaison, and a silent figure from the intelligence community, eyes unreadable. Bella was front and center, framed against a plain wall, no insignia, no ribbons, no uniform, just presence. Her posture was steady, her shoulders squared like a soldier ready for judgment. The questioning began cautiously, methodically. Timelines were traced. Tactical details of Operation Ghost Reach were revisited. But when they reached the moment she had disobeyed orders, the tone shifted from procedural to pointed. Lieutenant Halt, one general said, his voice deliberate. You disregarded a direct command to abort recovery. Why? Bella leaned forward, her tone unwavering. Because 6 of my crew were still out there. They weren't tactical assets, they were people. Leaving them behind would have been the real betrayal. Silence, a new voice snapped. Civilian, male. You understood that disobeying command could end your career. I did, Bella answered. I expected it would. And yet you went through with it. I did what I was trained to do, she said, voice steady. I brought my team home. From just off camera, Stratton's fist clenched. The quiet, measured defiance in Bella's tone held more power than shouting ever could. When the session adjourned, the board retreated into private deliberation. Bella and Stratton stepped outside into a different kind of pressure. The heat of public gaze. The crowd had swelled. A knot of cadets approached, reverent and nervous. One of them, a lanky young man with a trembling hand, held out his training manual. "Ma'am, could you sign this?" Bella blinked, caught off guard, then nodded. As she scribbled her initials, her eyes caught a glimpse of something tucked in the cadet's sleeve. A rough pencil sketch. A broken-winged eagle. Silent. Defiant. She handed the book back and turned to Stratton. "If they try to shut this down—" "They won't," Stratton said. "Not now." That evening, Stratton received a call from Washington. He listened, jaw tight, speaking only when necessary. When he finally ended the call, he turned to Bella. "They're issuing a formal statement tomorrow. Partial exoneration, a commendation for bravery, but no apology." Bella's eyelids fluttered once. "Cowards. They're also naming a new flight leadership award after you." She gave a humorless snort. "Give it to someone who still needs the recognition." Just then, Wexler entered, holding a secure tablet close to her chest. "You need to see this." She placed the tablet in front of Bella and tapped the screen. What played was neither crash footage nor ceremony broadcast. It was surveillance drone footage, time-stamped to the exact day of the crash, location, cum sector. The grainy footage showed Bella's jet limping through the sky, struggling. But that wasn't what made her inhale sharply. Flanking her plane for only a few seconds, two other jets, no tail numbers, no flags, no insignia. They peeled away before disappearing into cloud cover. "Those weren't ours," Wexler said. "There's no record, no logs." Stratton stepped forward, his face tightening. "Are you saying someone else was there?" Bella's voice dropped low. "No, I'm saying someone wanted us to fail." That one sentence changed everything. Until that moment, the classified nature of Operation Ghost Reach had limited speculation. But now there was something darker. Sabotage. Outside interference. A political trap disguised as a military op. "What kind of trap?" Wexler asked, whisper barely audible. "The kind where you're not supposed to come back," Bella replied. The following days blurred into a haze of briefings, interviews, cryptic phone calls. Requests poured in from journalists, from senators, even from foreign embassies. Bella declined nearly all of them. Her focus narrowed to one objective: uncover the full truth. With Wexler by her side, she began to piece together a damning mosaic: mission briefings, internal memos, intercepted communications. With Stratton's pull, she gained access to redacted files long hidden behind walls of bureaucracy. What they found confirmed their worst suspicions. Unit 077 had been deployed based on incomplete intel. The operational map had been manipulated. Reinforcements were withheld. And when the plan unraveled, Command had changed the mission directive. From rescue to containment. No extractions. No survivors. Bella had survived by mistake. "They used us," she whispered one night, eyes burning. "We were bait." Wexler didn't deny it. That moment of clarity became Bella's turning point. "I'm going to speak," she said. "Publicly." Stratton tried to stop her. "You'll be crucified. They'll tear through your life all over again." "Are you ready for that?" "No," she said softly, "but I'm not doing this for me." A week later, she stood at the base of the Air Force Memorial in Arlington. Cameras flashed, flag cracked in the wind. A crowd had gathered, veterans in uniform, families clutching old photographs, young cadets looking up at her with wide eyes. "I was never meant to speak again," Bella began. Her voice rang out over the hush. "They believed silence would be enough. That time would bury truth. But here we are." She told the story of Unit 077, of command betrayals, of voices erased. She spoke about silence used as a weapon, loyalty punished, and how true honor sometimes meant standing alone. The speech went viral within the hour. Across the nation, people listened. In the dorms of military academies, rough sketches of broken-winged eagles began to appear on walls, notebooks, and helmets. They weren't just symbols anymore. They were rally cries. Bella Halt, once deleted from history, was now its sharpest edge. And yet, for all her visibility, She had never felt more alone. The morning after her speech, Bella walked the length of Memorial Row at Fort Myer. The sun was rising, casting long shadows across the statues, and she paused, silent once again, but not silenced. Not anymore. The metal plaque showed a flight crew frozen mid-rescue, their faces cast in determination. Bella's reflection shimmered across its surface, slightly warped, as though time itself refused to let her look straight at herself. She hadn't slept. Sleep brought silence, and silence brought memories. Uninvited, unwelcome, vivid. The consequences of her revelations came fast. Public support swelled. Hashtags flooded the feed. Military families reached out, sharing stories of buried missions, quiet discharges, and forgotten heroes. Testimonies long silenced. But beneath the swell of empathy came the undertow. Cool, bureaucratic statements of context, tepid endorsements, and subtle warnings that she might want to stand down. Bella didn't. In a secured conference room in D.C., she sat across from General Stratton, Lieutenant Wexler, and a half-dozen congressional staffers. One face stood out, Senator Keely Armand, eyes sharp and still, absorbing everything. A former Army JAG officer and a persistent force on the Senate Intelligence Committee, Armand had built her name, taking on institutional rot. She listened silently for over an hour, never interrupting. And then, "You're telling me Unit 077 was sent into a compromised operational zone and someone up the chain issued an abort order, fully knowing your people were still alive?" "Yes, ma'am," Bella said without hesitation. "And they punished you for not following that order." "They did." Armand's gaze shifted to Stratton. "General, you confirm this?" "With regret," he said solemnly. "I wasn't part of the operation, but I've personally verified the evidence." The senator leaned back, her eyes narrowing. "I want a full intelligence briefing, and I want this reopened, under oversight jurisdiction." Bella had expected to feel something at that moment. Relief maybe, vindication. But she felt nothing, just a kind of cold vacancy. That night, back in a temporary quarters room loaned to her on base, Bella opened a box she hadn't dared touch in 10 years. Inside, 6 sealed envelopes, one from each of her fallen crew, written in the final week before they deployed. They had remained untouched. Until now. She opened Warren's first. It was a rough sketch, scrawled with inside jokes and sarcastic notes. At the bottom, "If we go down, at least we'll go loud." She let out a quiet laugh, but her eyes stung. "Next, Diaz, if you're reading this, Halt, I didn't make it. Don't let them say we didn't matter." She closed the box with trembling hands. The following morning, Bella requested access to the National Military Archive in Quantico. With Wexler at her side, they were granted limited clearance to classified microfiche storage. What they uncovered made her blood run colder. Most documents had the name of the officer who signed the abort order redacted, but in one carbon-scanned memo, the black marker hadn't fully obscured the signature. The ink had bled just enough to reveal it. Colonel Travis Barringer. Wexler's eyes shot open. "Wait, Barringer? He's on the board of Aerodyne Tactical now." Bella's heart pounded. Aerodyne, the same company that built the drone models used in Operation Ghost Reach. They kept digging. Flight logs, procurement chains, deployment timelines. The truth began to surface, chilling and undeniable. Ghost Reach had never been designed to succeed. It was a test bed, an experimental setup for real-time drone warfare. The operation had deliberately inserted human squadrons into a doomed scenario. Bella and her crew had been bait. Decoys. The drones didn't withdraw because they were overwhelmed. They withdrew because they were ordered to. "This was never just about you," Wexler whispered, stunned. "No," Bella said, rising. "This was weapons testing, and we were the disposable variables." She squared her shoulders. "Get me Stratton." That night, the 3 of them confronted him. Bella laid out the findings, piece by piece. Stratton didn't flinch. "I had suspicions," he admitted. "But this is bigger than I thought." Wexler asked, "So what now?" Stratton turned to Bella. "We go louder." Within 48 hours, a Senate hearing was scheduled. Small room, closed session, but the stakes couldn't have been higher. On one side sat Bella, Stratton, Wexler, and Senator Armand. On the other, Department of Defense representatives, an attorney for Aerodyne Tactical, and to Bella's quiet fury, Colonel Travis Barringer himself. He wore a civilian gray suit, no uniform. He looked polished, calm, older. He didn't recognize Bella at first, but when she spoke, his gaze changed. Colonel Barringer, Bella began, voice steady, do you recall authorizing the abort command on Operation Ghost Reach? I followed protocol, he said evenly. The area of operations was compromised. And were you aware that the drone units were pulled from cover just minutes before that order? Barringer paused. I don't have access to those logs. We do, Wexler cut in. They're signed under your clearance code. A flicker crossed Barringer's face. Senator Armand leaned forward. Mr. Barringer, are you aware Aerodyne Tactical has earned over $200 million in federal contracts tied to drone systems since Ghost Reach? No answer. Then Stratton. Ma'am, I believe we're looking at deliberate operational deception with fatal consequences. Bella looked Barringer straight in the eye. I lost 6 people because you wanted real-world data. And when I brought back the only surviving jet, you erased me. You disobeyed a direct order, Barringer shot back. I disobeyed a death sentence, she snapped. The tension in the room was a coiled wire. The hearing adjourned with no ruling, but with hours the story hit the press. Leaked testimony, internal memos, QM footage. It all surged through the news cycle like a firestorm. Watchdog groups called for investigations. Veterans rallied. Bella, unwilling but resolute, became the face of a movement. Military reform had a new name, Bella Halt. Within weeks, 3 congressional investigations launched. Aerodyne stock cratered. The president issued a formal statement calling Bella a symbol of resilience and truth. She didn't want it, but she accepted it, because somewhere in that rising air chaos, something fundamental had shifted. Bella traveled, quietly, without fanfare, to visit the families of her fallen crew. She returned the dog tags, told them what really happened. One by one, they took her hands and said, "Thank you for not leaving them." In the end, that's what mattered. Not the medals, not the news coverage, not the politics, just the simple fact that someone had come back for them. She stood again at the memorial for Unit 077. This time she wasn't alone. Stratton stood with her. So did Wexler, the cadets from Colorado, even Senator Armand. The plaque had changed. It now read, Unit 077, Operation Ghost Reach sacrificed, silenced, remembered. Bella reached out and touched the cold stone. Her voice, though quiet, was firm. Now, she said, we fly for real. But just as she turned away, Wexler's phone buzzed. She glanced down, her face going pale. Bella, she said, you need to see this. On the screen, a new satellite image. Same region, same coordinates. A convoy, armed, moving fast. The logo on the lid vehicle wasn't military, it was Aerodyne. Bella's jaw clenched. Her voice dropped. Then it's not over. Rain fell softly at Arlington, beating on her shoulders, dampening her hair like ghosts whispering, You're still here. She didn't move, didn't flinch. 3 levels beneath her, beyond 2 layers of reinforced security, another briefing was waiting. And Bella Halt was walking straight into it. It was starting. She wasn't just a symbol anymore, not a ghost or a whisper. Bella Halt had become something undeniable, a living witness to a truth that too many had tried to bury. The Senate Intelligence Committee had officially subpoenaed the internal logs from Operation Ghost Reach. Aerodyne Tactical, long considered untouchable, was now the center of a full-scale federal ethics investigation. And Bella, once erased, once discredited, was now the linchpin in unraveling a conspiracy far more extensive than anyone wanted to admit. She was tired, beyond tired, but she knew this wasn't the end. She still had something left to give. Ready? Wexler asked quietly beside her, straightening the collar of her formal suit. No, Bella said. Then, after a pause, but let's do it. The room was colder than she expected, lined with steel walls, flickering screens, and tension so thick you could taste it. Officers in decorated uniforms stood alongside lawmakers and auditors in suits. At the front of the room, a massive digital map glowed with red pulsing indicators. Senator Keely Armand presided over the session. Her voice cut sharply through the air. We are convened to confirm the scope of intelligence manipulation related to Operation Ghost Reach and to determine the extent to which defense contractors influence the outcomes of military missions. Bella was sworn in. She didn't flinch. The first question was one she had prepared for. Lieutenant Halt, were you aware that Unit 077's mission trajectory had been altered on the morning of deployment? Yes. Were you briefed on any hostile third-party observers operating in the QM sector? No. Did you receive any intelligence indicating that drone performance data was being prioritized over human safety and cover? No, Bella said, then hesitated. But I suspected it when our backup vanished without a trace. More questions followed, some expected, some designed to shake her. She stayed steady. Then the air shifted. They played a video. Declassified drone footage, grainy but unmistakable. Bella's jet knifing through smoke trails, her voice breaking through the comms, urgent, calling for extraction. Another feed from above showed two unidentified aircraft flying parallel with her for exactly 22 seconds before veering away. Calculated. Precise. Bella didn't look away. Not once. A congressman leaned forward. Do you believe those aircraft were part of a separate operation? I believe they were insurance, she said. Her voice didn't tremble. For someone else. Later, Wexler introduced internal communications pulled from Aerodyne Tactical's secured channels, messages containing chilling phrases like live scenario optimization, non-recoverable loss deemed acceptable, and zero pilot redundancy will reset doctrine. Senator Armand's tone sharpened, cutting through the sterile analysis. These were real people, she said, voice rising, not variables, not rows in a spreadsheet. A ripple of discomfort moved through the room. Back at Bella's temporary quarters, a flash drive was waiting, left anonymously. Wexler plugged it in that night. The screen filled with chat logs, pulled straight from Aerodyne's upper echelon executives. Among them, a single line hit Bella like a body blow. A 077 was a proof of failure run. They were never meant to make it out. The next morning, Bella requested to testify again. Voluntarily. This time the room was even larger. The press had been allowed in. Bella walked in wearing a plain black suit, no medals, no insignia. Her voice was calm but carried a weight forged in fire. They told me silence was service, that obedience mattered more than anything. We followed orders, and it got my crew killed. I broke orders, and I brought them home. She looked directly at the senators, the cameras, the country. So you tell me, which one of those is loyalty? The silence that followed was thunderous. Cameras caught every word. That night, Bella's full testimony aired across national news and social media, unedited. Veterans reshared it. Academy cadets quoted her speech. Even officials who had once denied she existed now issued guarded praise. Bella ignored it all. She wasn't finished yet. She flew to San Antonio, just her in a rental car, arriving at a small ranch house nestled at the edge of the hills. There, in a quiet backyard garden, lived Rosa McCrae, sister of Warren McCrae, Bella's former co-pilot. Rosa opened the door and froze when she saw her. Then she broke down and wept. They sat together for hours on the back porch. Bella didn't say much. She didn't need to. She handed Rosa Warren's dog tags, holding them out gently, reverently. He fought to the end, Bella said. I know, Rosa whispered, clutching the tags. He always believed in you. When Bella left, she felt something shift in mind, some burden lifted, though plenty still remained. 2 days later, her phone rang. It was Senator Armand. There's going to be a purge, the senator said. Quiet, internal, no press release, no medals, but changes will happen. I didn't do this for medals, Bella replied. I know, Armand said softly. That's why you deserve one. At the Air Force Academy, the graduating class requested that Bella speak at next year's commissioning ceremony. She declined. Instead, she sent them a photograph. 6 dog tags resting over the fractured wing section from Unit 077. No caption. They framed it in the honor wing. Weeks later, the Department of Defense issued a terse but telling memo. Reforms were in motion, oversight protocols on chain-of-command decisions, third-party review for classified missions, and deeper auditing of contractor involvement. The tone of the memo was clinical, sterile even, but Bella understood what it really meant. They were listening, not to her speeches, but to the silence she had broken. At the memorial, she stood alone again. This time, someone else approached, a young pilot, nervous but determined. "You don't know me," he said, "but I changed my track because of you. I was going into drones. Now I'm switching to combat rescue." Bella gave a small nod. "Bring them home," she said. He snapped a salute, and for the first time in years, she returned it, not as part of any protocol, but as something more personal. Closure. Morning light streamed through the slats of her temporary quarters at Andrews Air Force Base. Bella sat on the edge of the bed, staring at a pair of flight boots. They were brand new, issued the week before. She hadn't worn them yet. Her old ones were still in storage back in Colorado, burnt at the soles, the left one split where fire had chewed through the stitching. She couldn't bring herself to throw them away. A knock broke her from the memory. Wexler stood outside, holding a slim white envelope, her expression unreadable. "They voted," she said simply. Bella took the envelope and opened it slowly. Inside, beneath the seal of the Department of Defense, was a single line of final clarity. Recommendation for full exoneration and posthumous commendation of Unit 077. Her fingers tightened around the paper. There would be no parade, no ceremony, but the record would be rewritten. They would not be forgotten. Across the country, something had shifted. Whispered reforms began circulating. Memos passed through the ranks, reevaluating disciplinary actions involving whistleblowers, survivors, and buried black box data. A new oversight body formed, civilian-led. Bella watched from a distance. She turned down interviews, declined speaking engagements. She had said everything she needed to, but Washington wasn't finished with her. A week later, an official summons arrived. The National Defense Ethics Conference. Not as a witness, as a keynote speaker. She almost didn't go. It was General Stratton who convinced her. "People need to hear it from someone who bled for it," he said, "from someone who made it back." Bella didn't respond right away, but the next morning she reached for the new boots, and she packed. The auditorium near Fort McNair was vast, hundreds of seats filled with officers, analysts, contractors, and civilians. And Bella Halt walked in. The hall was packed, every seat taken by leaders in sharp uniforms and polished shoes, voices hushed in anticipation. Behind the curtain, Bella Halt stood quietly, her posture composed beneath a slate-gray blazer and a crisp white blouse. Her blonde hair, now just grazing her shoulders, was tucked neatly behind her ears. She bore no insignia, no medal or ribbon on display. And the broken winged eagle tattoo that once branded her survival, she kept it hidden now. She didn't need it to speak for her anymore. Her name was called. She stepped onto the stage. A hush rippled through the room. Not silence from disinterest, but a stillness so profound it felt like the very air had been caught in its breath. Then one by one, people rose to their feet. The sound of chairs scraping, heels clicking, the swell of applause. Loud, rising, unwavering. Bella stood quietly as it built, then gradually faded. When it was quiet enough to speak, she did. "Most of you know me because of what I said," she began. Her voice was even, steady, free of notes or teleprompters. "But everything I said came from what they did." She let the words hang. "I stood at a crash site no one should have survived. I carried 6 sets of dog tags across continents, in silence. I watched the institution I swore to protect pretend we didn't exist. And I survived. Not because I'm brave," she paused, "but because silence isn't peace." Her gaze moved over the rows of dignitaries, officials, brass, and advisors. "In this room sit people who draft policy, people who greenlight deployment models, people who decide what success looks like from 10,000 feet. So let me be clear, if your version of success requires people to die quietly, then it's not success at all." No one moved, no one dared interrupt. She kept going, no dramatics, no flourishes, just truth. She spoke of the mission, of the betrayal and the aftermath. She spoke of Stratton and Wexler, of Warren, Diaz, McCrae, Fenn, Lynn, and Roas, those who never made it back. She spoke of what needed to change and why. And when she stepped off that stage, no one clapped right away. The room was too full of what she'd just left them with. They were still holding it. Later, in the quiet of the lobby, a young major approached her. His eyes were rimmed red. "My father was on a mission like yours," he said. They never cleared his name, not until now. Bella didn't answer. She simply rested her hand on his shoulder, offering the only thing that felt appropriate: acknowledgement. That night in her hotel room, Bella opened her laptop. A single new email sat in her inbox. No subject line, just a link. She clicked. It opened a draft memorandum, policy language raw and purposeful. A proposal, formation of the Halt doctrine. Outlined within were sweeping reforms, ethical guidelines for combat planning, escalation thresholds that couldn't be ignored, independent oversight for classified ops, and mandatory protection for whistleblowers. At the top of the document, it read, "Proposed by General Malcolm Stratton in honor of Lieutenant Isabella Halt and the crew of Unit 077. Bella leaned back in her chair. Her chest rose and fell, heavy. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She just breathed. A month later, Bella returned to Colorado Springs. The Air Force Academy had begun to change. Murals were being reimagined, statues reframed with new plaques. In the eastern wing of the Hall of Valor, a new exhibit neared completion. Its centerpiece, a twisted, blackened fragment of fuselage, Ghost Reach Delta. Beside it stood 6 pairs of worn boots, a weathered mission patch, and an interactive display screen playing video logs, recovered transmission footage, and recorded interviews. Above it all, the title read, "The Flight That Came Back." Bella walked the exhibit in silence. No ceremony, no speeches, just her presence. A group of cadets wandered in, whispering until they noticed her. One stepped forward slowly, recognition dawning in his eyes. "You're her," he said. She gave a half smile, raising an eyebrow. "Depends who her is." "The one who didn't leave them behind." Bella nodded quietly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver pin, shaped like a broken winged eagle. "We wear these now, not official, but we know what it means." Bella turned it over in her fingers, then pressed it back into his palm. "Then carry it right," she said gently. Outside the exhibit hall, Wexler was waiting by the doors. "Heading out?" she asked. "Eventually." "There's a request," Wexler continued. "Joint Forces Command. They want you. Civilian liaison for operational ethics oversight. It's quiet work, but it's permanent." Bella didn't answer right away. They walked together beneath the fading afternoon sun. For the first time in 13 years, the sky no longer felt like it was falling. She hadn't said yes, not yet. But the offer sat in her inbox, flagged but unread, still alive. A position with Joint Forces Command, civilian ethics liaison, with oversight and access. The kind of post that would have been unthinkable for her a year ago. The kind that only existed now because of her, and maybe because of guilt. One morning, she stood once more in the visitors' lounge at Peterson Space Fortress Base. Outside, the Rocky Mountains gleamed in the pale blue daylight. Cadets marched in precise formation across the tarmac, their movements timed like a watch's heartbeat. On some uniforms, Bella saw them, tiny silver pins with broken wings. Quiet tribute, quiet revolution. Behind her, Stratton approached with a thermos in hand. "You're thinking about saying no," he said, offering her the cup. "I'm thinking about why I'd say yes," she replied. "You'd be in a position to make sure what happened to 077 never happens again." She exhaled slowly, looking out across the base. "You know these systems. They don't move until they're shoved. And even then, it's a half step." Stratton nodded. "That's why they need someone inside who's already survived the worst." She didn't answer. That evening, in her modest apartment on the edge of town, Bella opened the last sealed envelope from a box she'd carried since Kandahar. McCrae's letter. Warren McCrae had been more than a co-pilot. He'd been her moral compass when every protocol had gone dark. The handwriting was rough but deliberate. "If you're reading this, it means they got me, or they got all of us. Maybe you're the last one standing. If so, don't let them clean it up. Don't let them erase what happened. Don't let them turn us into a footnote. Stay loud, Halt. Stay stubborn. And if you can, go back in and change the script." She folded the letter with care, her fingers lingering on the creases. Her hand hovered over the delete button on the offer email, then moved away. She clicked reply. 3 weeks later, Bella Halt stepped into her new office in Norfolk, Virginia. The building itself was nondescript, just another secure gray facility behind endless fencing and a maze of parking lots. But inside it buzzed. Strategists, analysts, command officers, policy drafters, the machinery of war and oversight grinding forward. Her office was small, no windows. But the plaque outside read, Lieutenant Isabella Halt, RE Senior Civilian Liaison, Ethics and Oversight, JFC. It didn't come with rank, but it came with power. Within hours, she sat in her first operational briefing, Operation Winlock, a joint deployment involving cyber and ground assets in Eastern Europe. She listened from the back, absorbing metrics and acronyms, until one line made her sit up. Projected acceptable loss threshold, 5% of ground personnel. Bella raised her hand. The speaker faltered. Yes, Miss Halt? Her voice was clear. Define acceptable. Who calculated that, and based on what? A long silence fell across the room. And just like that, the quiet revolution continued. Some things should land quietly, like the sound of a safety catching before the first shot, or the breath someone takes right before choosing not to fire at all. The room stilled. I was taught to weigh outcomes, she said, her voice even, to calculate mission success in percentages and acceptable loss ratios. And I was good at it, until I wasn't. Until I looked at a line on a report and realized someone's life had been reduced to an algorithm. She took one step forward, placing the file gently on the glass podium in front of her. I won't pretend ethics is a clean science. War isn't either. But if the tools we use to measure a mission don't also measure consequence, then we're not avoiding mistakes. We're baking them into the plan. Her eyes scanned the faces in front of her. Officers, analysts, policy architects, each one quiet now, unmoving. When I reviewed the first proposal that listed a civilian zone as uncertain but acceptable, I didn't raise my voice. I changed the wording. Then I sent it back with a note. Uncertainty is not a shield for consequence. That sentence circulated faster than any directive I've ever signed. She paused. That told me something. Her hands rested lightly on the podium now, fingers relaxed but ready. Change isn't always about force. Sometimes it's about standing still long enough for the people around you to realize they're moving in the wrong direction. Another silence fell, this one heavier, more thoughtful. When I proposed the HO liaison protocol, I didn't expect it to get past the first inbox. It was blunt, it made people uncomfortable, and it didn't give easy outs. But it also gave a way forward, one where someone in the room could ask, is this the right thing? Before a decision becomes irreversible. She looked down, then up again. I've buried friends. I've delivered folded flags. I've rewritten reports and redacted images and stared at walls I thought would never crack. But they did. Not because I broke them, but because I refused to pretend they weren't there. She let the final words settle like dust on steel. We don't need perfection, she said, but we do need integrity, even when it costs more than we're ready to admit. And with that, Bella Halt closed the folder, nodded once to the colonel, and stepped back into her seat, quietly, firmly, like someone who'd learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not walk away. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The room, once filled with quiet confidence and the clink of polished metals, now pulsed with unease. Bella Halt stood at the center of it all, sleeves rolled, voice steady. You all know this already. We've trained generations on the rules of engagement. But what happens when the rules stop being principles and start becoming justifications? A ripple went through the gathered advisors. A few shifted in their seats. No one dared interrupt. What happens, Bella continued, her tone razor sharp, when the doctrine we write ends up protecting decisions instead of people? When civilian lives become a line item on a spreadsheet instead of a question we actually ask? Silence stretched like wire. No one answered. I've watched it happen in real time. I've seen spreadsheets kill. I've seen silence calcify into policy. She placed a dossier on the table in front of her. deliberately. This operation, this Peace Sentinel hold, it's viable, but not like this. Not with the current civilian risk model, not with the H-strike override sitting in the hands of one single node controller. A man from the UK delegation finally spoke. "And what do you propose, Miss Halt?" "Delayed response times, reduced autonomy," she said plainly. "I propose clarity, shared responsibility, and language that forces the people making the call to feel the weight of its consequences." From the French side, another challenge. "Do you truly believe doctrine can be rewritten without weakening operational effectiveness?" Bella didn't flinch. A faint smile flickered at the edge of her lips. "I don't believe anything," she replied. "I've lived it." That ended the questions. 10 minutes later, she stepped out. In the hallway, General Stratton was waiting. He fell into step beside her, eyes following the quiet determination in her stride. "You've made them nervous," he remarked. "They should be," Bella said. They walked past rows of framed military charts, decorated maps, photos of joint task forces, emblems faded by time. At the end of the corridor was a half-finished mural, UN peacekeepers wiring communications gear on a rocky mountaintop. "They're assigning a liaison officer to the next deployment," Stratton said. "First time that's ever happened." Bella stopped, narrowing her eyes slightly. "Me?" Stratton shook his head. "You're too visible now. They want someone new, but trained by you." Bella nodded slowly. "So it begins." Stratton let out a low chuckle. "It already has. You're just starting to see the shape of it." 2 days later, back in Norfolk, she stood in front of a new ethics cohort, 9 officers in total, 5 men, 4 women. Their resumes read like a cross-section of everything the modern military touched: law, combat strategy, human rights, defense policy. "I'm not here to make you liked," Bella began. Her voice was calm without ceremony. "You'll be sidelined, ignored, sometimes resented. Your job isn't to win arguments. It's to make sure the right arguments are heard before the wrong decisions get made." She moved slowly across the room. "There'll be a moment when someone looks you dead in the eye and says, 'This is how we've always done it.' When that happens, I expect you to look back and say, 'Then maybe it's time we do better.'" No one took notes. They just listened. Afterward, a young woman approached her quietly. Ardon Castillo, sharp eyes, nervous posture. She waited until the room had emptied. "My brother flew with Unit 077, she said. "He didn't come back. I just wanted you to know. I remember." Bella didn't hesitate. She rested a hand gently on Ardon's shoulder. "Then carry it forward." That night, Bella stayed late, her office dim, the only light from the screen glowing softly. She reviewed the first full batch of data from the newly implemented Halt liaison protocol. Adjustments logged. Casualty models tweaked. 3 active ops had been paused mid-review due to flagged ethical conflicts. Small wins, but real. Then she saw it. An operation flagged under the call sign Harawat, reclassified before her team could finish review. Bella leaned in, heart rate slowing. Something wasn't right. She went deeper. Harawat wasn't just a routine joint op, it was covert. A strike initiative entangled with private contractors operating under layers of legal fog. She found surveillance footage, grainy, high altitude, then transcripts, then an interrupted comms log. One phrase stood out: target neutralized, then silence. Then override acknowledged, liaison bypassed. Bella stared. They were already working around her. She printed everything, compiled the brief, boarded the next flight to DC. Didn't ask for permission. Stratton was waiting outside the building. One look at her face, and he said nothing. Inside, they faced the oversight committee. Denials came first, then deflection, then silence. Bella placed the folder gently on the table. Her voice stayed firm. "If this is what you call a doctrine of tolerance, then we're not discussing ethics. We're discussing theater." Silence. Finally, one civilian deputy looked up. "And what would you have us do?" "Investigate it," Bella said. "Start a full audit. I want access to every contract authorization and strike clearance tied to this." "You don't have that level of clearance." Bella didn't blink. "Then get someone who does." Stratton spoke up in support. So did Senator Keely Armon when briefed later that day. Within a week, an inter-branch review was greenlit. Herawatt was suddenly a keyword pinged across 3 separate agencies. But the deeper they dug, the thicker the resistance became. Internal emails disappeared. One liaison officer was quietly reassigned. A whistleblower report was retracted under administrative review. Someone was scrubbing the house. Bella didn't back off. She escalated. Filed appeals, raised red flags. And then came the pushback, not official, but deliberate. Her office was searched after hours. Her car was followed one night in downtown D.C. Her laptop showed signs of remote access. She filed reports with internal security and kept going. She wasn't afraid, she was furious. Because this had stopped being about her. This was about the idea of accountability inside a machine designed to erase it. She called Wexler. "I need you back, full time." Wexler didn't ask why. "I'll be there into the morning." Together they traced audit trails, dug into backups through unaffiliated signals intelligence partners, searched for threads left uncut. They found one, a classified white paper, dated 3 years prior. Title, Tactical Ambiguity and Civilian Acceptabilities Modeling. It detailed methods for shaping public reaction post-strike, controlled release timing, language dilution, statistical reframing. Bella held the document like it might bite her. "This isn't strategy," she said. "This is policy." Deliberate. She stepped outside her office, clutching the white paper, eyes fixed on the framed photo hanging in the hallway, the one mailed to her anonymously last month. Unit Yo-77, 6 people, dust on their boots, grins that didn't know history would forget them. Behind her, Wexler approached with a flash drive. "It's confirmed," she said. "That white paper wasn't theory. It's been used. 3 operations, including one just outside Aleppo. Civilian losses reframed as local conflict casualties." Bella took the flash drive. Her hand was steady. Her voice wasn't. "They're laundering ethics." Wexler nodded solemnly. "And now they know we know." Bella turned slowly. "Then we publish. Not through the system. Not this time. We go to the press, anonymous, if we must, but we release it." Wexler hesitated. "That'll end your liaison post." Bella didn't blink. "I know." "I'm not here for longevity," Bella said quietly. "I'm here for the truth." That night, she and Wexler sat side by side, drafting the leak in silence. They didn't release everything, just the undeniable parts. A white paper, a specific date, proof that certain reports had been tampered with. Not hearsay, not speculation, just enough of the truth to force open a door that had stayed shut far too long. Enough to burn through the silence. At precisely 3:17 a.m., it went live. By sunrise, it had already begun. The fuse she lit ignited something no one could put out. Bella Halt, once a ghost in the system, erased without ceremony, was now the one pulling the threads. Unapologetically, unafraid. She wasn't asking for permission anymore. At 7:45 a.m., her secure line buzzed. "Stratton, no small talk." "They're scrambling," he said, his voice tight. "Internal Affairs, the Intelligence Joint Task Group. You woke the dead." Bella sipped her coffee, calm. "They should have buried it deeper." He exhaled sharply. "You're going to be called again. To test of you." "Let them," she said simply. By 9 a.m., 6 major news outlets had already picked it up. Headlines exploded. Leaked recon data falsified. Drone withdrawal orders rewritten in real time. Satellite maps doctored. Bastard, a cover-up? The phrase tactical ambiguity doctrine trended globally within hours. At 11:30 a.m. the Pentagon issued a calculated, sterile statement. Preliminary findings are under evaluation. No final conclusions have been reached. But by 2:00 p.m., the story was no longer in their control. Internal memos leaked. Retired officers, once silent, came forward. And on national television, a former drone technician broke down in tears, describing how he'd been ordered to digitally clean his footage, removing civilian casualties, turning them into indistinct, neutral heat signatures. Bella didn't watch the coverage. She was getting ready. A courier arrived with a sealed summons, closed session, 48 hours. This time, it wasn't just testimony. It was a formal inquiry into national accountability. Stratton sent her a single message. Ready? She replied without hesitation. Always. That night, Bella walked again through the quiet, sacred shadows of Arlington. Her boots echoed between the gravestones, each one like a mirror, names that could have been hers. At the memorial for Unit 077, someone had pinned a small, weathered eagle crest to the granite. Dull, scratched, but real. She clipped it to her coat without a word, and then she walked into history. Inside the hearing room, the air was sharper than she remembered. The cameras had been disabled. Security was heavy, silent. Senator Keely Armand presided, eyes cold, expression carved in steel. Bella stood alone before them, calm, steady, certain. "You're here voluntarily?" Armand asked, voice low but razor-sharp. "Yes, ma'am," Bella answered. "You released classified material protected under national security seals." "I released the truth," Bella said, "a truth that was suffocating under red tape." "Why now?" Bella didn't blink. "Because more names keep being etched onto these memorials, and no one's asking why. Because silence isn't survival anymore. It's complicity." The room fell into a deep, heavy silence. Another senator leaned forward. "Are you accusing the Department of Defense of knowingly misleading both command and Congress?" Bella's voice didn't waver. "I'm not accusing them. I'm proving it." She handed over a second flash drive. It held full mission logs, intercepted directives, original signatures, dates that lined up exactly with drone retreat protocol shifts, a side-by-side visual comparison, unaltered versus doctored thermal maps. And then, clear as day, a red signature blinked on screen. Colonel Travis Barringer. The atmosphere changed. An aide dropped his pen. A staffer whispered urgently, "He's still serving on the Joint Procurement Advisory Board." Senator Armand leaned forward slowly. "Do you understand the gravity of what you've brought us?" Bella nodded, "Yes." "And you're prepared to face the consequences?" "I already have," she said, steady as stone. The backlash was immediate, chaotic, and contradictory. Some commentators demanded she be court-martialed for treason. Others insisted she deserved a parade, a medal, an apology from the highest office. Bella said nothing. She wasn't the story. But the truth? That caught fire. Veterans from across the country sent her letters. "Because of you, I spoke up. Because of you, I didn't pull the trigger. Because of you, I finally told my daughter why I never talk about the war." More internal documents leaked, tactical reports, old mission reviews reclassified after the fact, audit waivers with suspiciously matching initials. The pressure rose. Eventually, Bella was removed from her advisory post. No trial, no formal charges. Just a coded entry in the Defense Personnel Management System. Separation due to breach of protocol. She accepted it without resistance. And then she started something new. In a modest office 2 blocks from the Air and Space Museum, the Hold Commission for Ethical Warfare was born. Its first donors? 4 families from Unit 077. Its first staffer? Ardon Castillo. Its mission? Monitor, document, and advocate for ethical conduct across all active theaters, no matter the flag or the badge. 6 months later, their findings led to a full congressional hearing on autonomous weapon testing. 2 programs were suspended indefinitely. And Bella? She stayed quiet. Until the day they renamed a lecture hall at the Air Force Academy. No press, no fanfare, just a bronze plaque. Bella Halt Lecture Hall. For the lessons we nearly buried. That night, she recorded a single message. 1 take, no edits. Standing outside the gate she had once saluted through, she faced the camera, clear-eyed and steady. "I didn't do anything extraordinary," she began. "I just said no. I said no to letting numbers erase names. I said no to orders that forgot who they were sworn to protect. I said no to calling silence strategy." She paused. "If you remember anything," she said softly, "remember that." The clip aired once. It went viral across every military-based network within hours. A year passed. Bella returned to Colorado for the first time since graduation. She didn't expect a welcome. She didn't expect to be noticed. But as she stepped onto the tarmac at a forward training wing, a young woman jogged toward her. Precise posture, confident gait. A flight patch marked C-12, ethics lead. "Miss Halt?" Yes, I'm Lieutenant Ardon Castillo. You trained me. Bella's eyes softened. I remember. I deploy next month. Embedded ethics review team. Every mission has one now. Bella blinked, surprised. Everyone? Since 2 months ago. Ardon reached into her jacket and handed her something. A new patch. Unit 077. Below the eagle, stitched in gold. We remember. Bella took it. No words. The cadets saluted. Bella returned it, hand steady. And as the next wave of jets roared overhead, she didn't flinch. She looked to the sky and whispered, "This time they're not flying alone." A week later, a sealed envelope arrived at her Denver apartment, embossed with the NATO crest. Inside, a formal invitation to keynote the upcoming Ethics and Conflict Summit. Bella didn't attend. She didn't respond. Instead, she mailed back a single photograph, her shoulder partly in shadow, the ink slightly faded but unmistakable. The tattoo of the broken-winged eagle. Taped beneath it, a slip of paper with 5 typed words. I already made my speech. It's still flying. Bella Halt didn't miss the uniform. What she missed was the hush between the engines. The stillness when the altitude stripped away every sound except the truth inside you. There was too much noise, too many performances, too many statements crafted not for clarity, but for volume. These days, even the truth had to shout louder than the lies just to be heard. It had been a year since the leak, 6 months since the Senate hearings wrapped, 4 since the first batch of internal audits confirmed every word Bella Halt had spoken. But consequences, those took their time. She lived quietly now in a modest 2-bedroom house on the edge of Annapolis. A quiet street, the kind with retired neighbors and porch flags that faded slowly in the sun. Her yard was overgrown, not from neglect, but from the absence of urgency. The grass grew wild, and that was fine. She hadn't touched a weapon in almost 2 years. Her arsenal now was different. A pen, a mic, and late-night documents typed out with calloused fingers and a jaw locked tight. From her converted garage, Bella ran the Halt Commission, 6 staffers plus a rotating cast of volunteers. Lieutenant Sarah Wexler handled legal. A former human rights analyst oversaw intelligence vetting. The rest were veterans or family members of those who never came home. Every week, new cases arrived. Botched strikes misfiled as clean kills, suppressed drone footage, field violations rewritten into fog of war. Some incidents were decades old, others frighteningly recent. Bella read every one. She didn't show up at rallies. She didn't autograph books. She refused to become the icon they tried to turn her into. She worked, quietly, methodically. Every file, every affidavit, every raw, trembling confession whispered across state lines. Still, there were days when silence returned. Not the silence of avoidance, but the kind she used to know, the kind that came right before a storm. On a Tuesday afternoon, a plain envelope showed up in her mailbox. No return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper. Coordinates. A date. Nothing else. She ran them through the system. The location, a remote village near the Kunar Valley in eastern Afghanistan. The date, 7 years ago, right when she'd been deployed in K. She pulled reports from that time. Nothing. The village wasn't on any official record of a strike. So she made a call to an old contact, a war correspondent who made a career out of going off-grid. He called her back 2 hours later. I was there, he said. There was a drone strike. They said insurgents, but I met a woman who buried 5 of her children. There was no insurgent cell. They hit the school. Bella's voice dropped. Were you threatened? Not directly, but 2 months later, my visa was revoked. No reason given. You think it's connected? It's all connected. She hung up and called Wexler. I need every drone authorization code from May of that year. I want names. Who signed off, who reviewed, who rewrote. Wexler didn't ask why. I'm on it. 2 days later, the documents arrived. The strike had been classified as surgical. Hostile target confirmed. But the heat signature? It had come from a single cell phone ping, repurposed, unencrypted. Not a combatant, a teacher. Bella stared at the report. Her chest tightened. She flagged the file for priority review and added it to the next quarterly report. But the message, the envelope, its anonymity lingered. The next morning, she checked the mail again. Another envelope, no return address. Inside, a satellite photo, blurry, burned around the edges, and a handwritten note. They did it again. This time, there wasn't even footage. Bella bypassed internal oversight. She reached out to someone older, Colonel Miriam Vance, retired, once the director of combat surveillance archives. Vance had always lived in the gray zones. Cautious, yes, but not indifferent. They met in a greenhouse outside Baltimore. Amid orchids and the buzz of old glass humidifiers, they spoke in hushed tones like spies. "Why now?" Vance asked. "Because someone's baiting us," Bella said. "Or warning me." "Same thing." Vance handed her a flash drive. "I pulled this before I left. Never submitted it. Burkina Faso 2019. Strike analysis." Bella took the drive. Vance didn't flinch. "The numbers were wrong. Target was never there. All we found were civilians." "Why didn't you come forward?" Vance exhaled. "Because people like you hadn't made space for it yet. Now, maybe you have." That night, Bella opened the file. It was worse than Vance had described. Not just the strike, but the vocabulary used to justify it. Intelligence drift. Post-strike acceptability. Narrative softening. These weren't mistakes. They were doctrine. She called Wexler. "We have to publish again." Wexler didn't pause. "I'll prep the legal shield." By Friday, the Halt Commission dropped a new dossier. It didn't name names, not yet. But it laid bare the machinery, a silent war within the war, where data was massaged until the casualties fit the story. This time, the reaction was different. No outrage, no protests, just exhaustion. People weren't shocked anymore. They were tired of being surprised, tired of learning, again, that the institutions they trusted had twisted truth into something unrecognizable. But beneath that exhaustion, something stirred. Not fire, not yet, but resolve. That weekend, Bella returned to the academy. No announcement. She slipped into the back of a lecture hall during an ethics elective. At first, the cadets didn't recognize her. Then one did. Another nudged a friend. Whispers spread. The professor hesitated. A hand went up. "Ma'am," a cadet asked, pale-haired and sharp-eyed, "is it true you were court-martialed?" Bella stood slowly. "No," she said. "I was erased." A pause, then, "Which is worse?" Silence. She didn't stay long. But on her way out, a young cadet jogged to catch up. "I'm applying to be the next Halt Fellow," they said. "Just wanted you to know, I read all of it." Bella gave a faint smile, but it was real. "Then do better." As she drove away, rain began to fall. She didn't turn on the wipers. Let the road blur for a while. That felt honest, clear, but not easy, like the truth. And out there, just beyond the blur, more was coming. 3 weeks after the second dossier went public, Bella Halt walked alone through the National Archives. Not for ceremony, not for symbolism. She came to read. She passed glass cases and tourists until she reached the restricted wing. Wexler was waiting, keycard in hand, smile wary but proud. "They approved our request," she said. "Took them long enough," Bella replied. The room was cold, quiet. 2 archivists stood silently by. On the center table, 6 declassified ledgers, some yellow with age, others inked just months ago. Bella opened the first. The name on the cover wasn't hers, but it could have been. Same patterns, same gaps, different war. As they turned the pages, a larger picture formed. This hadn't started with her generation, and it wasn't going to end with it either. From Vietnam to Fallujah to the Horn of Africa, the same tactics emerged, the same lies dressed in delay, the same dead rewritten as acceptable. Only now, someone had begun to read them back, out loud. The names had changed, but the numbers hadn't. Bella paused, her fingertip resting on a single entry in the log. This one. This pilot had tried to abort the strike. She read it again. Overruled. Wexler leaned in, her brow furrowing. Same phrase as before, probable hostile convergence. Bella sat back in her chair, her eyes still fixed on the words. That phrase, hollow as smoke, had cost real lives. It was a catch-all, a justification that meant everything and nothing, and no one ever paid for what it covered. They remained at the archives until the last lights dimmed. Bella didn't say a word when they left. She simply gathered the files, signed the documents out, and walked into the night without looking back. The air outside was sharper than she'd expected, the wind biting through her coat like it knew something. Maybe it was age. Maybe it was just the weight of knowing. Too much, too late. At home, she laid the documents across the length of her dining table, pages rustling under her fingers like old ghosts. Red ink came first. Patterns, timelines, cross-referenced call signs. Then the yellow highlighter, looping around doctrine echoes that repeated like forgotten prayers. She worked through the night, chasing shadows and connections in the margins. By the time dawn crept in through the window, she hadn't moved from that table. Wexler arrived not long after, holding 2 cups of coffee, her voice soft and almost hesitant. "We've got enough," she said. "Not yet," Bella murmured. Her eyes were still scanning the last sheet. "We have the shape of the machine. Now we show the legacy it left behind." 7 days later, the Halt Commission issued its third and final report. But this time it wasn't an indictment. It was a blueprint. Not a finger pointed in blame, but a trail of language reshaped and repurposed over decades to sidestep accountability. The report detailed how each military scandal brought with it a new euphemism, each one crafted to protect optics and prevent outrage. How the public trust was not earned, but managed, packaged, circulated, and sold like a product. There were no enemies named, only habits, terminology, systems of self-preservation that mutated faster than reform. And at the very end of the report, there was a statement from Bella herself. "We were taught that war is a last resort, but no one taught us how to live with the silence that follows. This isn't a report about failure. It's a record of patterns. And maybe, if we learn to recognize them in time, we won't keep writing the same ending." The words echoed far beyond the document. They were quoted in war colleges, debated in think tanks, dissected in policy journals, translated, discussed, copied. A retired general sent Bella a private message. Just one line. "You didn't tear the institution down. You forced it to grow teeth around its conscience. Thank you." She never replied. There was no need. 1 month later, Ardon Castillo deployed overseas. The day before she left, she came to Bella's house. They sat on the porch steps in the late afternoon, sipping tea, the sky soft and fading above them. "I'm scared," Ardon said finally, her voice just above a whisper. Bella looked at her. "Good. That means you're awake." "I've read everything, studied every file. But what if I miss something?" "You will," Bella said, not unkindly. "But you'll catch the next one. And that's enough." A small, crooked smile pulled at Ardon's lips. "Did you ever think you'd end up here?" Bella tilted her head back, watching the clouds drift past. "No, I thought I'd disappear like the rest of them." "But you didn't." "No," Bella said. "I remembered, and I made sure someone else could, too." Ardon rose to her feet. "Then I'll do the same." They embraced once, quiet, strong, final. Later, as Bella walked back inside, she passed the hallway where a faded photo still hung. Unit 077, frozen in time. She reached out and touched the frame's edge with her fingertips. "I kept my promise," she whispered. The house exhaled around her. Outside, the wind shifted. The silence settled in again. But this time, it didn't sting. It held. Some stories end with justice. Others end in silence. But every now and then, a story ends by passing the truth into someone else's hands and trusting that they'll carry it forward. Bella Halt never set out to be remembered. She set out to remember. To bring light to those buried in footnotes and locked in files. To speak out when every system told her to stay quiet. To prove that dignity doesn't need stripes or brass to stand tall. Through the fire, through the paper trail, through the failures of those who should have known better. She stood. And by standing, she made space for others, for Ardon, for Wexler, for the nameless voices who now had a place to speak. Because of her, silence was no longer a weapon of the system. It belonged to the truth now.